If you want to participate, contact me at ordinarywomenpodcast@gmail.com. I'm sure you have great projects to brag about. You can also follow me and message me on Instagram at Ordinary Women Podcast, on Twitter at Ordinary Women PC, or on Facebook on the page Ordinary Women. Hi Danielle, welcome to a new episode of Ordinary Women. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming. Very excited to have you here. Yeah. Can you start by giving us a quick introduction of yourself, please?
So my name's Danielle Mikowski. I am by day a project manager in pharmaceuticals. I work in the vaccine space, and by night I am actually training to be a certified coach and become a neurodiverse coach. I live in London, the UK, well, just outside of London of the UK. So I was born and bred in London. That's a lie. I was born and bred in London. And then I met my husband, who's Polish and loves cycling, and he actually showed me that it's outside of the M25. It does exist.
No way.
And then we moved along with my mother. So we now all move outside in Hertfordshire and enjoy the countryside. And yeah, so my mum is from a small island called St. Vincent in the Caribbean. My dad's from a slightly bigger island called Grenada in the Caribbean. And I've got a family all over the world, but predominantly in the US, Canada, and Ghana.
Wow, amazing. Love that for accommodation for when you travel.
Yes, highly recommend.
That's the part. That's so cool. And can you tell us something unusual about yourself? I felt that you already said a lot, but...
Yeah, so I actually was reflecting about this on the train journey here, because I was like, what is really unusual about myself? Like what is truly? I've listened to a couple of people on this podcast and I've resonated with a couple of bits. But one thing I think is really, really unusual about myself is, as a child, I loved my mum. So I brought up by my mum. She was a single parent. She was amazing. And she literally made sure that every year we travelled. And we didn't go to the typical places that a lot of people in the black and brown community go to. They go back home to the Caribbean or to their like home country. My mum always took me somewhere. It was either like Italy, Spain or France, everywhere around Europe. And I got my travel bug from her. But also I realised that I liked experiences. So as an 8-year-old, I didn't want a birthday party. I wanted to go to a restaurant. And my mum worked in Green Park in central London. I wanted to go to a posh restaurant and have like wined and dined. And my mum would sit there as an 8-year-old in a restaurant with all these classy people eating and enjoying the experience and having different foods and just one-on-one with her. That's all I wanted. And one year I remember she wanted to run this birthday party. And I had all my friends, I hated it. I was just like, it's great, but I want to go and eat at a restaurant, or I want to go to the opera, or I want to go to the... Yeah, I was one of those children that was like, yeah, it was unusual. So that would probably be the most unusual part. But I think what I learnt about that was I love experiences. And if I was to put all my money into anything, it would be new adventures, new experiences, meeting other people. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's so cool. And that's so great memories. Like, it's so great memories to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What's your favorite cuisine?
I love Italian. Mm-hmm. I love seafood. Those are my main bits. Like me and my mum are a lover of seafood. So if there's any place that I go that's seafood, then I would say, Mum, we're going. But now with the way that London's starting to incorporate dining into an experience, one of the things I'd love to do is some of the experiences. So my mum was very, very privileged to be able to work in Green Park, Berkeley Square, which is right in the hub of Mayfair. And so when she retired a couple of years ago, there's a kind of experience next door where they do dancing and fire flame when you're eating and things like that. It's a real experience. Wow. It also comes with a price tag, but it is an experience. And that's the first time I went from her retirement, and that was amazing. And I think there's other ones popping up in secret places that you can have different experiences, which I would highly recommend if you want to do something a bit different and make the dining experience a bit more. Then I think it's worth looking into.
Cool. Yeah. I'll have a look into that because I want to go.
Yes.
And since here we obviously talk a lot about what it's like to being a woman, I'd like to start by asking, was there a moment in your life when you realized that you are a woman?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go as a scientist. So I'm a microbiologist by trade, even though biochemist by academia. I'm going to take it back to the science, take it back to the biology. So I think the first time really was when I started my menstrual cycle. To be honest, I was very much everybody's people are people, and I have grown up in a family where it's all women, and therefore I was very strong about having strong women around me, and because I didn't have many male people in my life, male role models, I just put us in the same part. I didn't think there was really much difference until I had my menstrual cycle, which was a classic experience. So everybody listening, every female listening to this is probably going to cringe because it could have been coming out of one of those like 90s like US movies. But if you can imagine, you're 12 years old, you're staying at your friend's house, and it's the summer holidays, and you're with your friend and her brother and her mother, and you're going to central London, and you're wearing your white jeans, and you're in Piccadilly Circus, and you go full flow, and it literally comes out everywhere. I mean, really and truthfully, when I see them in movies, I'm like, that is literally my experience. It's bad enough having it in central London with white jeans with your friend, but then your friend's brother being there as well, and it was traumatic. And then going home and then not being able to go because your mum was away, unfortunately, and unable to come home. So you had to stay there and be in this. And I remember this kind of situation, and I remember being angry and being like, why don't boys have this?
Oh my God.
Why don't boys have this? Like, really? We got the wrong deal. And it was quite a traumatic, situation. But I think that's when I realised the difference biologically between men and women. And then as I grew up, because I naturally get on with the male population. I understand them. I'm very much a people's person. So one of the things I do understand is their straight talk and stuff. I never really take them that to heart. Especially guys that can be quite direct, and I know everybody can be different. Doesn't matter what their gender, but I'm kind of like everybody's different, and I accept that. And I've always done that from a really early age. So I think I realised that okay, there is a difference. And then I suppose with the biological bit, I was like, that's not fair. Then when I went to schooling and stuff, as I got older and you go through your teenage stage, you realise there is a difference. And then when I went into the work, like education, you start to understand a little bit more and see a little bit insight of the social aspects of the difference between men and women. And I think as I've gone through my career, I've definitely seen how the expectations are for women and men. Like I sit back now, I'm associate director, and I look back at my career and I think if I was a guy, maybe of a different colour, maybe if I was still me to some essence, would I be further in my career? Would I not? So it's all that kind of curiosity around it. And obviously there is a level of, gender balance that we need to have in our society and stuff, but it makes me really think twice. And another aspect from a neurodiverse perspective is now learning to work in that space is understanding that a lot of the diagnosis for neurodiversity is based on white boys, and understanding that you can't be female and be neurodiverse, and you definitely can't be any other nationality other than a white background. And it's just interesting to understand where those all came from, and
So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And talking back on that last point of because like it kind of comes from representation. Did you suffer from lack of representation of women? You mentioned that you had very strong, like women heavy, I don't know the English word, like surroundings.
Yeah,
like
so family. Yeah. So I was brought up with, my mum's side of the family, who were predominantly I was brought up with, they were like literally 4 women and my uncle. And one of my aunties had 1 boy, the others had boys, but they were younger, so they were really classed as like children when we were growing up because the other son was at home. And then then there was me, and my other cousins also were older, so there was quite a bit of a difference. So it was very women heavy, very women, you know, and I felt that strongly around me. And plus my friends and my mum had friends that they were always female, and so it was a very female orientated community that I was brought up with. Funny enough, even though I wasn't around my dad's family growing up, my dad's family is the opposite. They're all boys. And it's so interesting now because when I interact with that side of the family, it's completely different because it's like, there's boys. Oh gosh, there's boys. Because I'm so used to being around really strong women. Like, we were the kind of women that, like, I hate to say man brain, but we all had male brain. We could interact with males, females. We were really like diverse. We were independent. We were strong. We were in our little bubbles of our world. We were very strong women, and suppose I always got brought up like that. I think, other than the difference, I suppose, to some people's experience was, as I was brought up in North London, and the time I was brought up in the 80s and the early 90s was that area was brought up around for families. Now, the part of North London I lived with was very predominantly, it was quite mixed, but it was predominantly on the white race. So it was very Caucasian, very British, on the borders between North London and Hertfordshire. So being around a lot of the black community, I wasn't really used to as much. I was a little bit, but not so much. And I remember when I went to university, I went to Kingston University, and I remember all the friends were like from South London, the East London and stuff. And one of my friends was like, have you been to Brixton? And I was like, no. Like, people from North London who associated Tottenham just don't go to Brixton. People in South London who live in Brixton just don't go to North London and Tottenham. It's just one of those things. It's got nothing to do with any things that they talk about in the media now. It just was a thing. It's like, South is far. It's south of the river. What the hell? So she was like, you're in Kingston now. You're in South. Like, come to Brixton. The first time I went to Brixton, I walked out the station. I looked around, and this is really... Part of me is slightly embarrassed by this. I walked out the station, I looked around, there were so many black people, I got so anxious. I got back on the train, and I went back home.
Oh, wow.
Because I wasn't used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened when I went to the Caribbean for the first time. I just wasn't used to it. I was used to having mixed cultures. I was used to having very much a white-dominated area. So where I live now, which is a very white-dominated area, I'm just used to it.
Okay.
So it's just... So representation to me is a bit of a switch because, yes, I am aware that there's not representation when we talk about media, when we talk about the workplace, we talk about senior leadership, when we talk about entrepreneurship, when we look at all those in politics, when we look at all of that, I clearly see there's not a representation. But the upbringing, the experience I have is that I have been brought up and that's been okay for my living experience. And I am one of those people that will kind of be devil's advocate and probably say, what do you mean by representation? Because the way I see it is we're moving now to that point where we're pivoting to have more inclusion. And I know for the black and brown community, if you look at anywhere on media now, it's like, the Western world is really trying to push. For me, my utopia would be that everybody's represented at that table. So, you've got ginger hair with pale skin, you've got Asian, you've got your hubs, you've got black, dark skin. Like, everybody is just represented at that table who bring their experience. That, to me, is utopia. It's not about shifting one way to the other. And I think one of the things I spoke to you about also was around, growing up, me and my auntie was obsessed with adverts. Like, everybody's going to have coffee and go to the toilet, that would be our prime time. And one of the things was representation in adverts. And I remember calling my auntie about 5 or 6 years ago, because I think it was BT or someone had done not just a black person in an advert, but it was a black mum and a black dad who wasn't was not mixed. They were not light, they were dark, with a black child that genetically made sense in our community. Because, you can have, obviously, various, you can have, like, darker skins and have light kids, but it just looked more authentic in that space. Had the whole advert at Christmas time, which was one of the prime advert time. And we were just like, oh my God, do you see the advert? And we used to call each other, have you seen that advert? And we would talk about, oh, is that great advert, or that wasn't a good representation of our culture. You know, we would talk about this, and we still have those conversations. There's a lot of programs that came up around, you know, the Caribbean and Windrush, and that a lot of British films. And, you know, one of the ones that came on Channel 4, I had to have a conversation with my mum around it, because she actually didn't like the representation that it was giving. She didn't feel like, she was born in that time, it was in the 70s. She was born that time, and she was like, I didn't think that actually represented, I'm not that rude boy, push up, your man thing. She goes, that's not how I was. And I lived that time. Actually, we were glammed and sparkled and, you know, talking, you know, all different types of, you know, accents. And she has a very, very English accent. So she's like, I had a British well-toned accent. That was not representing me. So I always say to people, when you talk about representation, really think about what you're doing, and think about more inclusivity than anything else. So yeah, and that was a long-winded question, but there was loads of areas to it.
Great. Like, thank you for giving all the full picture. I love that. Thanks so much. Yeah, so interesting. I honestly don't know, like, don't have anything to add, but like, just so interesting to listen to you.
Thank you.
And yeah, you talk a lot about this strong women figure around you. So who were your role models growing up?
So obviously, I think everybody could probably tell my mum was probably one of my biggest. She's one of my biggest cheerleaders, along with my husband. But yeah, she's definitely bringing me up on my own in the 80s. You know, doing a job, working in banking, working for a Lebanese bank, which isn't easy enough with the culture and, you know, the changes and the hierarchy there, and her being quite a strong, independent woman, but being in a culture, Lebanese culture, which is where the men are very strong and independent. And yeah, just bringing up in that space, I think she's definitely my role model. She's always been the one saying you can do it, and also challenging my mindset. And then my aunties and my cousins, just having their own different experiences and their own different personalities, has kind of like opened my mind to different ways that women can be women. You know, and women can be strong, and women can be soft, and women can be whatever they want to be. It doesn't have to define who you are and what you can achieve. And then I have some amazing friends within work, but also some really, like, I say, my ride and die friends outside of work who really support me. And again, they're quite diverse, so all over, who just really challenge my mindset. And you know, we have loads of discussions around different things, from spirituality to religion to economics and finance, everything, and really helped me kind of question myself internally around what I think, and not get too dictated by what societal pressures and society thinks that you should and shouldn't do, and really kind of help you on that journey. So yeah, I've been very, very blessed to have probably an army of role models around me as I've gone through my life, to say you can do it, and also we got your back, and kind of have this community of sisterhood.
That's amazing. What's the last thing that they taught you that you grew about or changed your mind about thanks to them?
I think it's more like the challenges that they bring. So I'm at the moment doing coaching and stuff, and the reason why I did that was I'd had some feedback at work that, you know, you're much a people's person, you like to help people, you like to develop people, you like to see people grow as a leader. That's the kind of leader I am. And it's funny because I spoke to a couple of my friends before I was doing the course, but I said to them, like, something I think I really want to go into, and I spoke to one of my friends, and she was like, really? Like, she was like, I was waiting for you to catch up, like 100%. And I was like, really? I didn't. She goes, of course. And there was another guy friend of hers, who was saying that he wants to do something similar, and she was like, I'm not sure if but you, yeah. And then I asked a question, and then they were able to tell me, oh, but you this is what I see you do. And some of those people don't work with me, and through that journey, the last year has been a journey of going through the training and stuff, and I tap into them, and they all still very encouraging. And even my mum, she's a bit obviously concerned because she's like, oh, having a business, scary. But then in her questioning and curiosity, I find that she challenges my mindset. What do you think about this? What are you going to do about this? Where's your plan for this? And it's like, oh. So there's not think there's one thing. I think it's just pure encouragement and the challenge that I get from, because it makes me think, am I doing the right thing? And then I know if I answer that question myself, it'll give me more confidence to just be more determined to do it. Or it's like, if I come and say, I really don't know, then like, right, how do we strategize? How do we help you find what you don't know? And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really the best you can hope for.
And I think we're very lucky as women. I think we underestimate the sisterhood that we create as a community. Men do have that, but I know from my living experience from looking at my husband's kind of like circle and other guys that I know, they don't always have, it's not given that they have that brotherhood the way that we have sisterhood. You can put two women who don't know each other in a room and there's magic, and that's the thing that we have naturally as women, and probably something we underestimate that men probably don't have.
Yeah, I read a few weeks ago an article about that, and about how much men sort of rely on married men rely on their spouse for their social lives.
Yes.
And yeah, I remember growing up once, my mom was out with her friends, and it was just like women's nights out, which my dad would never do with his male friends, husbands of friends of my mom. Yeah. And it was like, I don't understand why they need to do that. Like,
they don't understand that, they think they're just gossiping and probably talking about them. They don't realise that they're not the head of the conversation.
Yeah.
These are the areas that we talk about, love, sex, money, spirituality, society, what's on TV, our energy, our emotional, mental health. All these things is where we confide and have those conversations. And I do sometimes feel for the male community. They don't have that outlet. They don't have that support. Where would they talk? We could, someone's going through some sort of health concern. I can sit with my women and I can talk about these things. And not everybody has that. So, some people don't have the luxury or privilege to have those people around them. But I think generally women do. Guys, I find they don't. So when they're going through things, I always say to my husband, if you're going through something and you can't talk to me, just talk to your boys. Just as long as you talk to somebody, I really don't care, but talk to somebody. Because they don't always have the opportunity. And it's not because they don't want to, it's just that they don't have that same, that natural connection sometimes that we have as women.
Yeah, completely. And also being, growing up being socialized as, man up and all that.
Don't cry.
Yeah.
You can do, you don't need to do anything. You're independent, you're strong, you should do it, it's yeah.
Yeah. Not fun. But very happy that we at least, got the right package on that.
Exactly. In that case, I prefer to take that and have the period and the trauma than not have that support. Exactly. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for sharing. Moving on to kind of the almost second part of this podcast, I'd like to focus on a project that you did and that you're proud about. And yeah, what do you want to talk about?
So I want to talk about my experience, I suppose, working in STEM and moving through that career and where I am going now in terms of the neurodiverse space. So just to give some background, so I've worked in my organisation for about 17 years now. Okay. 10 of those years I worked as a microbiologist, and now I work as a project manager. And one of the things I realised, it's interesting you talk about representation actually in your previous part, which links to this part, is when I worked in the industry, I didn't really think about my ethnicity or my gender really being an impact. And then when I joined my organisation, I was a contractor and then I got permanent. Actually, microbiology is probably one of those biology areas where it is quite predominantly female. So one thing I should have added as my role models were also my work mums. I have many work mums. I was one of the youngest when I joined that department. I kind of grew up with them, so they saw me from like early 20s all the way through to my mid to late 30s. So it was, they see me meet my husband. They saw me at my wedding day. They saw me buy my first property, drive past my driving test. It's really weird. but they're amazing women as well, all different nationalities as well. And so that was a very interesting time, kind of going through that. But what I realised was that I was very much aware of representation in terms of ethnicity at that space. And that's probably the first time I was looking around the table or looking around the building and the hallways and thinking, where are the other black women in here? Where are the senior black women? And it was an interesting situation. So what I kind of stayed in my lane, and I also realised at that point as well, so just to give them added background is, my mum went to my primary school at the age of 4 and said, my daughter's dyslexic. They said, no, she writes with her left hand. Back in the 80s, that was a thing. If you were left-handed, it was seen as, no, it's that's the reason why you're having all these difficulties, probably with education. It's got nothing to do with anything else. Unfortunately, my mum was right. And at the final year of university, I got diagnosed with dyslexia, and quite severe dyslexia. Just when I was about to graduate. Anybody's neurodiverse at that time, it was very much, you don't tell your employees that you're neurodiverse in any sort of, you have any neurodiversity, that any sort of way, shape or form. So I went to work. I didn't tell them. Within 2 weeks, I had them call me into the office and say, Danielle, I think you're dyslexic. And I turned around and said, yeah, I am. And they were like, right, okay. And we came from applying. And my manager at the time, bless him, thought it was best to not say anything. So until I was made permanent.
Okay.
And then when I was made permanent, I got reassessed again, like I'd changed. And then I gave that into work, and nothing was done about it. They didn't really have anything in place at the time to support that. So I think a part of that's a key part for my journey, because that and the representation piece was the lack of confidence. And then I had an individual kind of say to me, I think you're really good to go into project management. When I moved into project management, I also did an extra like safety roles as well and stuff like that. So I was like doing safety representation and stuff. When I moved into project management, I sat on a call, and I was there on the call to help in terms of being safe, some part of workplace safety. And I remember someone senior who didn't say their name saying, oh, thank you for the support that you have in the organisation to help me with my neurodiversity. And I was like, what? What do you mean? What help do they have? I've given them my full assessment.
Yeah.
Where, so what Danielle does in these situations is that her inner Danielle comes out, and she has a rant, and then she talks to the head of that initiative and asks them why it hasn't been communicated out. And then from that pivoted into getting involved in the workplace adjustment and giving feedback. And on top of that, at the same time, simultaneously, we had a Professor Sarah Rankins join and come over to the organisation to do a talk about neurodiversity, in which a group of us went to the front and was like, we want to know more. And then she challenged us to go away and just talk about neurodiversity as a small group. Out of that group, we co-founded the Neurodiverse Network, which holds an organisation, which we build now over 400 members, a community. Which we've been doing for the last couple of years. So that's the bit that I'm proud of. I told you I'm going to get there. That's the bit that I'm really proud of. So I co-founded, I currently lead the Neurodiverse Network, and it's an amazing space to support neurodiverse individuals in our community, to help them understand, not have this moment in a meeting where you find out something's available and you didn't know. So help them understand what is available for them, what support that we have in the organisation. Also for them to just help them understand a little bit about the challenges and help others aware of the challenges. And the second pillar is around management and helping leaders understand what they can do, how they can talk about allyship. We talk about support, we talk about sponsorship, how they can actually understand more about these people and this community, and what they can do to help not just support the challenges, but embrace and really highlight the talents they have in communities. And I know there's some people who might be thinking, well, neurodiversity, not everybody's got superpowers. I personally believe that everybody's got some sort of talent that they have. There's a gift that they have. whether it's big or small, it could be that you can stack the shelves in Tesco's at the quickest time, or you can, it doesn't have to be something such like completely world changing, but all those little bits that we work together on help the full picture. And then the third pillar is really helping the organisation understand the benefits about having a diverse in terms of thinking, communication and learning. Not just a diverse in just race, ethnicity, gender and sexual orientation. That there's more than that. We can be they encompass all of those areas, and we need to think about the way we communicate. We have to think about the way that we support each other. We have to take into consideration the way we're thinking. If we want to be innovative, if we want to strive in technology and science, we can't keep on repeating the same thing with the same people. And that inclusivity is really, really important. So, and then the next steps, I suppose, which I'm also proud of, is now moving into the neurodiverse coaching space and creating my business around that, which is around then taking what I've learned, my living experience, and really helping individuals, help them find coping strategies with challenges, but really understanding where their talents lie. Understanding how to navigate and explore that journey. It's not an easy one. Help them, what we say, come out of the closet, because there's another type of closet, and just embrace it and really be proud of it, and build that culture within their lives and maybe their communities and hopefully their workforce where they get embraced and they feel comfortable to be able to disclose it. So that's the next step.
Wow, exciting. So much already that you're doing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Coming back just a little bit on the organization that so you created, how did you do it? Like, how did you create it? And also, is it just inside your company? Are you extending it to other company? How big? Yeah.
So
I have a lot of questions. So.
Yeah, no problem. So it's currently within my organisation. So basically, we sat around a table, and after having a conversation around this, we were like, why do we have all these other, we're called ERGs, so employee resource groups, for all these other areas? It's like, why do we not have one for this? So we thought, okay, let's just start it. Let's see. So we did a little bit of research, tried to find out if there was anything else that happened. There was, but it didn't actually go anywhere. And then we just thought, okay, let's do this. I was doing some project management training at the time, and I said, we've had our first meeting, and if you know anybody that is from the neurodiverse community, if you get us in the room, we will talk for hours, but the action will be very minimal. So after our first meeting, where I realised we had loads of ideas, but no one wrote anything down and nothing was recording, and we weren't really organised, and knowing the space that I worked within the organisation and understanding the structure and the kind of like seeing the corporate side of things, I actually said, let's bring in a project manager who's outside of that, who's neurotypical. So neurotypical is what we class someone who hasn't got neurodiversity, not from the neurodiversity community, and help a structure. So I just reached out to someone who wanted to get experience, who wanted to get training, he wanted to have evidence, and I said I can write testimony to say what the feedback, and they really helped to set up. So we really started from the business perspective, what added value to the business. We thought very carefully about who we could support, because we had some people who were parents of neurodivergent children, and we wanted to make sure that they felt inclusive. But we realised that from a business perspective, we had to focus on the employees, and it would then roll out to impact parents. And our focus was really awareness. That was the biggest part. And bringing that awareness in-house, understanding what neurodiversity is, what neurodivergent means, that we know we're all different, but this is the challenges that we can have, and these are the amazing strengths and talents that we have and superpowers that we can do. Are you thinking about that when you're recruiting? Are you thinking about that when you're developing staff? Are you thinking about that when you're looking at setting up projects? You've got the right people in the right places to deliver that project and be successful, like build us up for success. And yeah, I think that was really the main point. It was really building from that. And then COVID hit. And working in pharma, it was a challenge all my core team, other than me, were put onto COVID projects. And for 2020, just try to keep things going, try to connect with people, try to keep the conversation going in the community, but it was difficult. By the end of 2021, when things were a bit more settled, some of the core team members came back. Some have now moved on, but we've got new members in. And now we've expanded to having representations in the US. Because of the line I work on, I'm under Italy, and we've got someone in Belgium. And we've also got someone in Latin America kind of representing. So we're trying to build up that global awareness, which is another additional challenge because of neurodiversity and what it's seen outside of certain countries. It's not really recognised. And also the laws are different. So we have to be very mindful and careful of it. But we're a global organisation, so we need to be inclusive of everybody. So it's really, really important. So yes, we're starting off, and then me personally, I've reached out now to external ERGs and networks, to other companies like AstraZeneca and BBC and Capitula and HMRC, and to just kind of bridge that, build that connection. And there is a focus group that was actually already developed before, a round table to kind of discuss and to kind of share how the challenges and the best practices that we can do to implement this kind of network within organisations, especially big corporate organisations. That I suppose the expectation for young people is if they go there, they'll have that support, but the reality is it's not always the case. And the reality really is that there hardly is any companies that actually even are aware of neurodiversity. They're aware probably of autism, Asperger's, because of some of the needs that those individuals sometimes have if you're on the extreme part of the spectrum, and the extra support that's needed. But when it comes to someone like myself, who they deem as, you're fine, it can be quite challenging for people who are just doing okay to be able to get that support.
Wow. And have you already seen a change in your organisation?
Yeah, so I mean, I've leveraged on that, obviously due to the George Floyd situation that happened a few years ago, that the race and ethnicity agenda is very high, and also being a woman, that agenda is still around. So I've leveraged on that to make sure that I'm sitting at the tables in some of those conversations, and then I bring up the neurodiversity conversation agenda. And I was very, I had an opportunity to be able to talk to the CEO of my organisation, and it ended up being broadcast out and a little bit of information put out there, which I thought was actually fantastic to be able to just bring that message across. I mean, we've grown from a group of, 5 individuals having a coffee on our site in Hertfordshire, Stevenage, to having over 400 members globally, not just of that community, but also leaders, who are actively trying to be allies or get clarity around how they can support individuals or get support themselves. We're raising that topic with HR to understand how we embed it into our policies. We are sharing our learned and living experience from all stages. We've just had internal discussion, webinar and workshops around people coming in, graduates and young people who had that support through further education, who will go into the workplace and realise, I don't have that support. Their experience, sharing their experience of what they've had and the benefits and some of the best practices when they come to work for our organisation. We've shared, people that have been diagnosed in their 40s and 50s, their experience. People who've got kids and the different types of neurodiversity is a big umbrella. And we've also started to work with senior leaders to create workshops to kind of bring scenarios to plan and get them to think outside the box and how their behaviours and how they need to be inclusive in terms of their communication style. And so yeah, I think with the organisation we're not there yet. I always say we're in the embryotic state.
Okay.
So we're very, very early, but I can see people being aware of the word and questioning with curiosity.
That's already like such a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you actually do it? Like, what were the steps to create this?
It literally was, okay, guys, we need to meet up once a month. We need to actually get this information down on paper. So we did the typical project management, project charter, looked at the benefits, talked to some of the stakeholders around, you know, what would be the benefit to GSK, did a bit of, you know, research externally. And then because COVID hit, actually, we were basically doing it just our Stevenage site. And then I was like, but I was coaching and mentoring someone who was in microbiology who was also dyslexic, but on my old site. And so I was like, do you want to join? We need more people. She's like, yes, I want to join. I was like, visibility in the organisation, this will be good for your career, blah, blah, blah. So she joined, and then we're like, okay, we have to include that site now. And then COVID hit, and then we were like, okay, well, we've got global people now joining our community, so we need to think about how we can spread it out globally. So it kind of trickled, and it was just us sharing information. So it was really just us sharing our thoughts, anything externally. So we have neurodiversity week, which is usually in March, sharing that, setting up calls and webinars. Because of COVID, everybody wasn't, you know, dictated to go and sit in an auditorium and listen. We could now do things online.
Yeah.
So we're doing like Teams, the speaking, and really trying to home in and just bring in awareness. And then we were doing presentations to individual departments as well that requested it. So I think in total we've probably done around probably 30 or so presentations between all of us around different parts of the R&D and tech biz part of the organisation. And that incorporates departmental presentations, ones across the organisation, and smaller group kind of like interfaces and stuff like that. Working with I&D space, working with recruitment space with like people coming in and apprentices and things like that. So it was just us basically saying, we're going to put this on, let's see who comes. And I remember the first time we were like, if it's just the 5 of us, I mean, if we get 6 and there's just one other person, that's fine. What we didn't really realise is that there was a community out there. Well, we knew, but we didn't know if they were going to come, and they have, and it's just been amazing the feedback we've got. I've had people say, I have worked in this organisation who know me from when I first joined, said to me, I did not know that this was your agenda. I didn't realise this was your thing. And I'm so happy because I work in this industry. I love science. My child is shown they love science. They have a neurodiversity, and I'm concerned about them going into the workforce. And you've just made me feel so much more at ease. There'll be a place for them when they go into the workforce. Yeah, and I've had, you know, mothers call me and say, my daughter's just been, and I had a woman tell me, my daughter's just been diagnosed with dyslexia. I went to your talk, you're dyslexic. Is there any advice? And that's when my coaching thing came up, because it was like, what do you want to know? Well, you know, is there anything I can do? Do you want to do all the kind of like educational piece? I was like, I don't work in education. I can give you my living experience. I was like, what's your thoughts? You know, am I pushing my daughter too hard? I'm doing all these extra things. And it's like, and she's like, I don't know if I'm pushing. I was like, how do you know? Have you asked your daughter? No. I said, I just think she's really tired. I was like, at the end of the day, I'm doing all this stuff. She's gone to work. And she's like, sometimes, mummy, I don't want to do it. Or mummy. I said, how do you know that she's had a really bad day? And the one thing she looks forward to is reading bedtime with mummy. It's like, the only way you're going to know is ask. The best way to understand someone in the neurodiversity community is ask them, especially if they're children. And I always say, you know, it's a great example because, like I said, my colleague, who's a member of the core team, who was on the other site, who joined our core team now, and is really flying and doing all the, like, really proactive in doing presentations and getting herself out there. She's a woman. She's Caucasian. And it's interesting to say, we're both dyslexic. And we're actually very similar. I see similarities in our personality. I was like, we have different needs. So you can't cookie cut everybody. You can't say, right, I've listened to this podcast, I've seen Danielle talk about dyslexia, right, that's it, I know about dyslexia and I can apply that to everybody. No, you need to ask. And I said, as a parent, I said to her, embrace that. And I said, how do you not know that she's so grateful for the support that you have given her as a mother? You know, it's not easy. Have those conversations with yourself. Have those conversations with your husband. Embrace that you have been able to help her. Embrace her personality. But they focus so much on how can we get her to better? We need to be able to fit her into society. And it's like, what's the amazing things that she does? Yeah. What does she bring? What gives her energy? She's like, oh, she does this, this, and this. It's like, I said, there's probably other things that she's like, oh, mummy, did this at school today. I really love it. Note those things down. And she cried. She cried and she was so thankful because she'd spent so much time and so much stress and so much apprehension and trying to fix and mould her daughter into what she thought society needs her to be, to prepare her for education, further education, and then whatever career she wants to go to, instead of actually taking a step back and saying, what do you like? What are you good at? What do you struggle with? And being very, very clear, you know, communication is writing, is reading, and for someone who's dyslexic, that can be challenging. But what gives you energy? And how do we need to pivot that? Because, you know, we didn't have mobile phones when I was growing up. We did one computer for one class. Now look where we changed. We've got a computer carrying around most of us all the time. God knows what's going to happen when that child is 8. By the time they're 18 and 28, things will be so different. So yes, you need to have communication and writing and reading, but what level, to what extent will you need that in the future? So, yeah.
That's amazing. It must feel so helpful also after that conversation. And yeah.
It was one of the pinnacle parts of my career, of my personal development, when I realised that I actually can make a difference in this space, and this is where I need to be. This is where I can show representation as a woman, representation as a Black woman, representation as someone who's worked in corporate and understands the struggle and some of the, you know, not knowing where to go, understanding the difference between the coaching, the mentoring, and the sponsorship, and how crucial sponsorship in your career development is. And then also understanding the challenges I have, but then really embracing and then learning to embrace the talents I have. And that is probably the hardest part. I think for everybody, I think embracing their talents can be difficult. But for the neurodiversity community, where you've got potentially a massive increase in terms of mental health, you know, internal and external ableism, so your internal and external script of what you've been told as a child, the trauma that you've had through growing up and been thinking that you're not good enough, the confidence that sits behind, the lack of confidence that sits behind that, to be able to identify and then embrace it can be quite a challenge. So if I can help people do that, and I get people who say, yeah, I've been able to understand or at least have their mindset kind of like challenged and flexed to as we say, we talk about growth mindset in the corporate world and psychology, but you know, learn to do that, learn to understand those changes, then yeah. And one of the things I learned is coaching is a bit about neuroscience, and those, you know, neuroscience is around making those new pathways, those new habits. That's the thing that we need to understand as a society. We need to break that old habit that we need to do stuff in this way and embrace that community, embrace our diversity, whether you're neurodiverse community or neurotypical. Just really understand, okay, everybody can bring something to the table. And what we don't seem to get yet as a society is that if we get everybody to the table, we could make that magic that we've been trying to search in our little groups. That's to me, the human evolution is more psychological and communication and emotional intelligence evolution. It's not going to be technology. It's not going to be us growing tails or wings. It's, you know, it's going to be the way we think, the way we communicate, the way that we interact and relate with each other, and with technology and society, the way things are going.
Yeah, definitely. And was there someone who helped you in doing this?
I think I was always inquisitive as a child. My mum definitely was, because she was always like, I was the baby who was 2 who babbled, and the adults was like, where is that noise coming from? And I would be talking before I could say words. And I have to say a massive thank you for my mum for not trying to shut me up. I mean, she did say, you know, the old school, children should be seen or heard, but realised very quickly that wasn't the case in some areas with me. And I think that's just become one of my gifts, to be able to articulate and get my message across and inspire others. So I thank her for that. I thank one really dear and close friend of mine who worked in my department, who my manager said, you can go and work in her department. And she turned to me and said, yeah, I'd love you to come and work in this part of microbiology, but you're going to get bored. And I think you've got amazing gifts and you should put it outside somewhere else. So we're going to try and see and help identifying that. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have moved into project management. And to this day, the roles have kind of reversed now, where we talk about her career and her development, and we kind of work with each other. And she's the same age as my mother, so it's completely different personality. The only thing I think we've got in common is that we are we're women. Yeah. We live in Hertfordshire, and there's aspects of her personality that are very similar, but pretty much we are poles apart in some aspects. And she has been an amazing advocate, support and sponsor. My sponsor, my organisation for my department, who, after me ranting around on a call around, it took me 10 years to get promoted, and really making it clear to leadership that, to some really senior leaders on the call, that I didn't realise, that, you know, highlighting it when we had some new people talk about, oh, we could do this and that in the, you know, in the ethnicity. And I was like, yeah, we've done that. Yeah, we've done that. Yeah. Had the able to relate to what I said and reached out to me, and then basically sponsored me and helped me navigate the conversation to get, you know, to progress my career in the organisation. To my manager, my current manager, who, when I said I wanted to do coaching, could have turned around and said, I tried it with somebody else, it's not going to work, and actually advocated for me. To one of my first project leaders, who within 2 weeks turned around and looked me in the face and showed his blue eyes and said, look at my blue eyes, you are a people's person. I've never met anybody that could work and read a room like you. You have a gift, when I really didn't see it. And to some of my coaches and clients who've turned around and told me how I've been able to change their lives. So those, you know, and I can't miss out the one person, because it would be my husband.
Yeah.
And my stepson, for challenging me. My stepson's amazing in terms of questioning. We have loads of conversations about his generation, my generation, ways of thinking, learning, and my husband has kind of been there supporting me. So I would like to say it's all women, but I can't. I can't deny that there's men in my life who've been really supportive and really helped make me steer on this course where I'm going at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds like you have amazing people around you.
Yeah, really very privileged. Very, very privileged now.
That's amazing. Yeah. And also, if you're a people person, you know, not surprising that you're able, you know, to...
Yeah, I think my curiosity is always been in people's behaviours. So I'm always like, I'm very much, my friends call me up because they want the truth. If you want to sugarcoat, then don't call me. I will tell you it real, but I will tell you in logic real. I won't tell it in a hard place that you'll come out depressed. But I was always interesting. I think now I've moved on, as I've had a big birthday, moved on to more curiosity around, well, why does someone do what they say or do what they do? You know, it's different to what I want to do, but maybe something I'm missing, maybe something I can learn from their behaviour, from their thought, from their experience, that will help me in understanding why I have these, again, certain internal script in my life, but also then helps me when it comes to working as a project manager with my matrix teams, and it helps me in my coaching business as a coach. Because you need to, in both aspects, there's the same skill set, you need to listen. And when I mean listening, it's not, you know, I've been talking a lot on this podcast, but believe me, when I'm in that state, I need to be the one that's talking the least.
Yeah.
And I need to be here, not just listening to the word, but hearing, watching, observing, taking on those little bits that make up the real dialogue that sits behind the words. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And we've talked a bit about the challenges that you faced, but was there something that was easier than you thought would have been?
Oh, I think the easy thing was when I actually went into a project management role. So I worked in the pharma organisation, and the pharma and vaccine organisation merged. And I think I was one of the first people in the UK to move over to the vaccine part of the organisation. And therefore I was working with people from Italy and Belgium, which I hadn't worked with before. It was mostly US and UK. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, it's a different culture. And talking to my old head of department, and he's from Belgium, and he was like, yeah, so what you need to know is it's made up, you've got French, you've got Netherlands, etc. This is the culture, blah blah blah. This is the whole historical culture, the historical history of the sites. Obviously, when basins change and stuff like that. And I was really nervous because it really put my people skills that I was used to navigating with people in the US and UK and outside of work, but in a corporate environment, a professional environment, working. And I was like, oh my God. And I was, like I said, I just went in and did what I did and walked out and thought, not sure if I'm doing great. And everybody was really supportive. I wasn't judged, or I didn't feel like I was getting judged because I was a woman. I didn't feel like I was getting judged because I was black. In countries where there has been a stigma around minorities, I felt inclusive, and I was working completely virtual in cultures where community and face-to-face is so strong. If you think about the Italian culture, it's very strong around you eat together, you sit together, you live together. And so I knew that from one of my other roles where the site was very much people lived in the community, which worked on a site. So I kind of used that experience to try and understand more around the Italian culture and the culture in Belgium. But I think after I just kind of went in and did what I did. And then my manager was like, oh my God, you're doing amazing. And I was like, really? And I think, like I said before, my project leader looked in his blue eyes and he said to me, he goes, I've been working here, in a long time in the vaccine space, in this kind of role. He's quite senior. He's actually got more senior since. And he said to me, I've never met someone who'd been able to adapt and read a team, understand how to get that team to work, multiple different personalities so quickly. Within like 2 weeks, you had it all laid out. I've never met anything like that before in my career. And for some, I think that, like I said, that was the biggest turning point for me, because it was, if someone else had said it to me, I'm like, yeah, you're my friend, you want to help me, or you're my mom, of course you're going to say that. Or, but for someone who didn't know me, being a male, I know it shouldn't be, but it being a male, being of a senior role, to actually stand back and then continuously say it throughout that year and tell my manager that this is what I see, like, this is gold dust. Like, even to the point where he's like, I don't think you should be doing this job. I think you should be doing another job, which means that you should be doing this and this. Like, we're not utilising that skill that I see in you. And it was just, it was, I could do this. This was easy. And then using that to then go into my coaching, to go into training, to go into consultancy and advising within my organisation about what they should be doing around the neurodiversity topic, and finding that ease, and people coming to me and people finding out that they listen to what I say. That was, you can see in my face probably. If you can't see in my face, if you're listening, I'm literally beaming because it's just, it was amazing.
Yeah, no, it really is. And why are you proud of yourself? Why does that make you proud?
because I think I can leave a legacy of, I suppose I would love to leave a legacy within my organisation that will carry on way after I'm here, that people feel inclusive and comfortable to come to work as they are and be able to do their job with ease, with the support of the organisation, to help deliver, medicines to patients in that sector or whatever job they want to do. I think I'm proud that there's individuals here who are so amazing. These are amazing individuals. Whether you're neurodiverse, and I've coached people who are neurotypical as well, so it goes above and beyond that neurodiversity community, but who are amazing, who feel so lost. And I just feel like amazing, and the magic when they can actually come to me and they say, I reflected on this, or I've just realised that I was thinking this way and maybe I can think a little differently, or I've just realised something that I can do, or, I was really struggling with X and now I feel peace. To help someone's life, even if I died tomorrow and I've helped one person, I think I'd be happy, because that's that one person who could go on to do greater things. I always say to people, I'm not the CEO. I'm the person that helps create the CEO, and that's my proud. So when my one of my apprentices that I mentored and coached got her first and her degree, I cried. And when she got her promotion, I cried. And now she got another job, another promotion, and I cried again. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're like my mum. And I'm like, yes, I'm crying. Because, if she becomes senior way up in that organisation, my career, that's, I'm happy. I don't need to be there. It's what I can do to help others be the best they can, because my light, my magic is helping people understand and get where they need to be. And if I can get the younger community, the older community, to help understand what they need to be that inspiration, and the younger community to be guided by that inspiration from the older generation, but also understand what they can deliver and how they can come to the table, then, that will be change. And we will make real change, not this kind of like, it's real change in the way we approach problems, the way that we work and communicate and interact with each other, the way that we can change society's mindset. So
amazing. So many things to be proud of.
Yeah.
That's so great. That was my last question. Thank you so much for everything. It was so interesting and fascinating.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we haven't talked during the podcast and that you wanted to mention?
No, so the only thing is that for anybody listening out there that is a part of the neurodiversity community, remember to look at your talents. Those challenges can be overwhelming. Make sure you balance your energy, make sure you look after yourself, and it's really, really important. For those who are not sure, feel free to, there's loads of information online, but they can get in contact with me if they need any support, and I'll give the information on the podcast. And you don't have to have a diagnosis to know if you need support. So if you just need support, the best thing to do is to seek that support to help you. Obviously, I'm a neurodiversity and career coach, so the details will be there. It's Thinking Light Coach for Instagram, so at Thinking Light Coach for Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Even if you just want to have a discovery call to think about how I can help support you, please reach out and see how I can help you. As I say, find your aha moment, but also and find your light. So, what do you think?
Amazing. Well, yeah, everything will be in description anyway. So yeah, anyone can just click wherever they want to.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much again. It was amazing to have you here, and such an interesting topic.
Thank you.
And as usual in this podcast, the guest gets the very last word. So the mic is yours.
So yeah, I would just say to everybody, embrace your talents. You've all got them. Don't let anybody say you haven't. Even if it's maybe this what you may think is the smallest thing, or society says the smallest thing, you've got a talent. Make it shine, because you never know who you're inspiring and what difference you can make.